Hello students, welcome to the world of chemistry. My name is Nareen Budhwani and I'm really happy to have you over here. In this chapter, we'll be learning about some basic concepts regarding chemical reactions. We'll learn about some different types of chemical reactions. We'll also learn about how chemical reactions are represented, and we'll learn about some basic phenomena like corrosion. So let us just quickly get started. But before we get started, I really want you to look around yourself. Think about your daily lives. There are various instances in our daily lives where a chemical reaction is taking place. We don't really outrightly call it a chemical reaction, but a reaction is taking place. Just think about it. From cooking of food to burning of oil to burning of wood, these are all some basic examples where a chemical reaction is taking place. Instead, to think of it, our lives would have been very different if it was not for chemistry. And I'm sure you might be thinking that how do we really identify a situation around us where a chemical reaction has taken place? It's fairly simple. A substance or a reactant, we'll come to what a reactant is in some time, but a substance is said to have undergone a chemical reaction if, firstly, there is a change in color. Secondly, there is a change in state. Thirdly, there is a change in temperature. And lastly, there is an evolution of a gas involved. So these are some basic indicators which help us identify that a chemical reaction has taken place. Now that we have learned about how we can identify reactions, let us just quickly take an example. But before I get to the example, I want to remind you about something that we have learned earlier. We have learned earlier that the atmosphere around us contains oxygen, and that's our primary source of oxygen. Now, having said that, coming back to the example, let's take a strip of magnesium and burn it with the help of a burner. Now, as you can see, what do you observe? You will observe that magnesium starts to react with the oxygen present in the atmosphere in the presence of heat to give us a white powdered substance which is called magnesium oxide. Now, I can't really always talk about reactions in the form of sentences, right? Magnesium is reacting with oxygen to give us magnesium oxide. There has to be a simpler way to represent reactions. There is a simpler way. Right? Now, every chemical reaction can be represented in the form of word equations or chemical equations. Now, as you can see, the reaction that we just underwent can be written as magnesium plus oxygen will give you magnesium oxide. Right? So, this is a word equation. Right? Now, can this be represented in the form of a chemical equation? Of course it can. We have learned about periodic tables in our previous classes. Right, so simply applying the same, Mg plus O2 will give us MgO, that is magnesium plus oxygen will give us magnesium oxide. Right, now the substances which are present on the left hand side of the arrow, right, these are called reactants. Reactants are nothing but substances that undergo a chemical reaction. The substance that is formed after the chemical reaction is called a product, right? So, the left hand side of the chemical reaction is called the reactants and the right hand side of the chemical reaction is called products. It's fairly simple, right? Now, since this reaction has been taken place with the help of heat, above the arrow, we'll just simply represent heat with the form of a triangle. This basically represents that this reaction took place under the presence of heat.